I've been noticing a trend in movies and TV lately which is starting to really annoy me. It's the shoehorning of action sequences into comedic or dramatic movies or TV. Of course, being a piece of media with multiple genres is fine, but I'm noticing that a lot of entertainment seems to inject action in as an afterthought. It is almost always done very lazily, and it drags down the entire quality of the piece. Action can get your heart pumping in a way that no other genre can, and to see it brutalized in a lot of otherwise well-made movies or TV shows really breaks my heart. So, I thought I'd make this video to explain to any content creators out there what not to do if you're planning on shoehorning in some action sequences. This is how to do good action. Now, in my mind, there are really only two things that you need in order to do action well. You need to be visually engaging, and you need to be emotionally engaging. Why don't we start with visually engaging? A good action sequence will almost always be visually interesting or unique in some way. This is the reason why Michael Bay is still making Transformers movies. They're fun to look at.
Staged huge, logistically complicated scenes of massive destruction and explosions, and even when I was watching those dailies without the actual Transformers there, it was just eye candy.
Love them or hate them, the fact of the matter is that these movies do well. I mean, look at this trailer for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. This is such a visual spectacle. I'm gonna hate watch this movie, and it's gonna be great. Not because of the plot, but because there is so much visually going on, you can tell each action sequence is always gonna have something to draw you in. Of course, these movies aren't well made in many ways.
Algorithms! Math!
But they do play to the need for audiences to be visually engaged.
Now, when I go to the cinema, I want to sit there in the dark with strangers and just get sucked up into the screen, and anything that gets in the way of that just keeps you out of the experience. That's what we all want.
Of course, you can engage audiences with a more well-made piece of media than Transformers. Let's take a look at a fight scene from the second season of Daredevil. This scene is interesting and fun to watch without really knowing anything about what's happening. The one-shot style draws the audience in, makes them feel closer to the action. The lights being shattered takes the scene into darkness, and it really gives it a unique visual style. The use of the chain as a weapon allows the scene to have interesting spacing. All these things combine to mean that watching this scene play out is just fun. Now let's look at a fight scene from the end of that season. This scene is overall a much more generic fight. It's also dimly lit, but the way it's shot makes it much harder to actually see and follow the story of the fight. It ends up just looking like a bunch of dark bodies wriggling around. There are still some pieces of impressive choreography, but overall it feels a lot more like things that we've already seen. And that makes it less engaging. Of course, it could be worse. God forbid you have your characters do this. These are two master martial artists who are experts in combat both with weapons and hand-to-hand. Not only that, this is a fight with the big bad of this season in the season finale. This is the final fight, they just punch each other 11 times. On to emotional engagement. The big thing here is that you need stakes. For action sequences to actually matter to the viewer, they need to matter to the characters. The reason that two characters are fighting or chasing each other or whatever, it needs to be obvious and it needs to be consequential. The more invested you are in the story surrounding the fight, the more it feels like each punch a character throws is actually hitting and actually hurting the audience.
I'm sorry.
One movie I saw recently which did this to an intense degree was Civil War. While it was flawed in a number of ways, the entire movie, and even its marketing, had been building to one final fight between Captain America and Iron Man. The movie had spent time developing their characters and motivations, and you felt invested. You feel the emotion and the chaos which was leading up to this fight. It felt real.
I could do this all day.
But selling a fight is not just about the stakes of the story as a whole. Individual fights can have their own little mini-stakes. With the Cap and Iron Man fight, you could tell that there were going to be actual consequences, and it engages you more because of it. Audiences can tell whether a fight is going to be consequential or inconsequential. If two parties come out of a conflict with nothing different about them, then why bother putting it in at all? The TV show Arrow is very guilty of doing this. Each week there is a conflict which is hyped up as being incredibly important and incredibly dangerous, and each week there are no consequences to anything that the main characters do. Characters fight, nothing happens. Characters fight, nothing happens. Characters fight, and nothing happens. There is no emotional consequence to any action sequence at all during the entire 4th season. Usually that means I just alt-tab during any fight scenes they have. They're boring.
I always said that if I was to do movies just for action's sake, I wouldn't do them. I mean, if there's no story, what's the point? So.
Now, I know I started this video by saying that there are only 2 things that you need for good action, but I'm just going to sneak one more in here real quick. The final thing you have to do to not ruin your TV show or movie is care about the action sequences that you're putting in. This isn't just when writing the script or shooting the action, this means caring about it the entire way. Editing is something which can completely ruin action scenes. It's much too dense of a topic for me to do justice to in this video, but I'll link some additional videos which go into more depth. I will give one example though, which is this. Look at that shot. There is a huge gap between Andy Samberg throwing the hit and the villain reacting. It noticeably ruins the scene, and it's a perfect example of the lazy attitude towards action nowadays. Was it really so difficult to choose another take in editing, or to film another take on the day? I know it's a bit of a nitpick, but it's things like this which betray how little the creators actually care about their work. That can completely ruin the experience of watching the episode. If you don't care about making your show cohesive, why should I, as the viewer, care about watching it? Even if your show is a comedy or a drama. If you're going to put in an action sequence, please, do it right or don't do it at all.
Down so much that all you can manage to do now is sit there, thinking back on all the choices that you made to get there, bumping the fist to the sky and telling God it ain't fair, but yo, we ain't